Welcome back to our French defense series. We're going to be looking at a lot of the frequently occurring to completely obscure sidelines of the French. So let's go ahead and get started with the rarest of the lines. First, bishop e3. And it looks like it just hangs a pawn. That's because it does. But you have to be careful in these lines nonetheless. After knight d2, knight f6, f3. Don't just give him the big center. Take the pawn. Take up the challenge. Now, just like in other variations of the French, we want to play c5. We currently can't. So, what's a move to prepare it? Knight bd7. And after bishop d3, we get into c5. And now, the only claim that white has is extra time here. So, don't get too greedy. After queen c2, you see the attack forming. b6, get development, knight g5. Now, it looks like white has a big attack. If you stay calm, you shouldn't have any problems here. Check. Attacks our rook. So after bishop a6, rook c8, bishop g5, and we have stopped the attack. Check. Queen e2. And I'll stop the line because we've traded queens and we have no problems here. So that's the first of the sidelines. Now, let's take a look at some of these more obscure lines. For instance, knight c3 on move 2. Typically, when you see these types of variations, you're going to find that they're just going to play capture on d5 and transpose into an exchange variation, which we covered in a previous video. But this is one of the rare offshoots, the two knights variation. And after e5, d4, c5, it looks like, if you were paying careful attention when we were going over the advanced variation, that white is already going to be giving up the center. But he has a nice idea here after d takes c5. He's trying to trick black into playing bishop takes c5. You want to hold off on this move, because if this knight can't be here to protect the king side, and white has a bishop on d3, he'll have a lot of tactical possibilities. So we wait patiently. Knight c6, bishop f4, since we were attacking the pawn twice. And now knight takes c5 instead. That way, we'll be able to, at our leisure later, take this bishop on d3 with our knight without any problems, because we're always looking to get rid of that bishop. That is the only minor piece that can really cause us serious problems. So after bishop d3, bishop e7, bishop d7, and white has run out of ways to really seriously improve his position, but black, on the other hand, can continue to do so. He finally decides to castle. Now white saves the bishop, but it's not really a concern because it can't attack us right now. Bishop e8, rerouting. And after b4, knight d7, a5. After knight b6, we're eyeing these squares. Knight b5, rid of one of the attackers. And after queen b6, we have absolutely no worries of being attacked. Now we're simply going to improve our position. We got rid of a bishop. We have an excellent pin, and I'll end the line there because it's clear that black has an advantage with the bishop pair. The next line I would like to look at is move 2, queen e2. Now this looks like some sort of coffee house chess move that just out of nowhere. The premise is very straightforward if you understand it. If black plays d5 immediately, when white captures, you have to recapture with the queen and you're going to lose time. Very, very simple refutation here. Play bishop e7. Now you'll be able to play d5, and if he takes, capture back with a pawn. Typically what you're going to find is this variation will go into like a weird King's Indian attack, which we're saving for the last variation we're going to look at. After e5, knight fd7, c5, and I'll go through a few more moves of this game, but you'll find that against the King's Indian attack, you typically don't want to castle kingside because white will get a big attack, and that's where all of his play is. So we leave our king in the center as long as we can, or castle queenside. In this variation, the only reason black castled kingside was because the attack was going to dissipate very quickly. And now this is one of these lines that it looks like the knight's going to be better than the bishop because all of black's pawns are on the dark squares in the way of the bishop. But the bishop is very actively placed, and the more pawns that come off the board, the quicker we see that this passed d pawn is going to be devastating. And black simply picks off these pawns one by one, protects his king, and I'll end the line there because it's clear that with the extra pawn, black has a decisive advantage. So we have one more variation to cover, and this variation is played rarely, but it should also and always be taken seriously. After c5, there are two main lines, the first being pawn takes, and after knight f3, remember the key move c4, forcing white to lose time, and after knight e7 and knight bc6, we're just going to get standard and normal development, no problems there. c3 is the other variation, and we're going to continue to play as normal. By normal I mean going after this bishop. Extremely important. Anytime you can get rid of that bishop in the French, being your bishop, its counterpart, is so awful stuck behind the pawn structure, we typically want to do so. Check. We've gotten rid of the bishop, which is a moral victory in the French in and of itself. And after knight e7, we get a very, very good variation of the French, where all of our pieces are developing naturally. And notice how positionally this bishop is awesome. It agrees with the pawn structure. And black in this game is going to consistently fight for the f5 square for his knight because it's an excellent post. So after he takes, what's a move to try to reclaim the f5 square from this pawn? That's right, get this pawn to move away. h5. And it's also going to open up the rook for a potential attack against the king. So no matter what he does, I'm going to get the f5 square back. If he pushes, I get it back. If he takes, I get it back. If he takes, well, I get the f5 square back. And now it's very, very important to make sure that, keep in mind, a good bishop is a bishop that agrees with his pawn. A good knight is a knight that is anchored, that cannot be kicked away. After king g2, bishop h4. He gets rid of that and puts the knight right back on f5. That is the theme of this game, knight f5. Trades a set of rooks, gets rid of that pawn, and gradually works against the open king. Except for this whole walking into the pen and losing the game. Now, the most popular of the side variations in the French, the King's Indian attack. After knight d2, I have a very, very specific idea to play against the King's Indian attack. You don't just want to play bishop e7 and castle because you give white what he wants. First, we'll look at, after b6, this is a very nice move, the sideline c3, and you're just going to get a typical French-like position. It's going to transpose. So we won't worry too much about that line. I want to focus more on g3. Now, this is very important. This entire maneuver is based off the fact that white's e-pawn is weak, and we can attack it very quickly. Takes, takes, bishop b7. Now, he's got to figure out a way to defend this pawn, and the only way he can do it is queen e2, the odd move that we've seen in previous variations. Now, knight c6, we're threatening to go to d4 or b4, so he's got to play c3. And now black is continuing with very nice ideas here. He plays a5, which looks like a prophylactic move. Like if we put our bishop there immediately, he could play b4. That's one idea of a5. The other idea of a5 is after bishop g2, we have bishop a6. Very, very strong, attacking the queen and trying to prevent white from castling, keeping the king in the center, which we know would be very, very bad for white. So after knight c4, black makes sure e5 can't be played once and for all. And after castles, bishop c5. knight e8, rerouting to go to d6, and after rook d1, queen f6, takes. It's easy to see how there's going to be problems here after a very easy move like g6. So white takes drastic measures to try to slow down the attack. But the game is already decided from the exchange. All black needs to do is get a rook to d2 after piling up the rooks on the d file. The symmetrical pawn structure in the exchange is more than enough. Hopefully all these variations will help you be very successful against the sidelines and